I am thrilled to be joined by my good friend Susan Crossman, who is an author, a book coach, and an adventurous. I love that phrase, that term, who loves to harness the power of a good story to the goal of peace on earth. That is so cool. Having written 5 traditionally published books herself, Susan helps other inspired entrepreneurs polish their stories to make a difference in the world through her company, The Awakening Author. She provides book coaching and editing services and runs online programs for budding authors. Above all else, in all she does, Susan encourages her clients to join her in the all-important task of seeing with our hearts as well as our eyes. That is a beautiful introduction. I'm grateful that you shared that with me so that I could share it with my audience.
Thank you.
And it's interesting. I just did a Facebook Live on my Facebook business page, and I was talking about learning to find your visual voice, not just your spoken voice or your written voice, but your visual voice. And someone asked me, Sharon actually asked me, how do you know that you've actually found your voice as opposed to just think you found your voice? And if my business being named Gifts into Gold, I often think about things in terms of gold. So how do you know that you've got real gold and not just false gold when it comes to your voice? Any thoughts on that?
Oh, boy, that is a fascinating topic. I go by what it feels like. When you write something and as you're writing, you go, ooh, yeah, I really like this. Wow, yeah. And then I'm going to do this. And you go back later and you read that, and it's almost as though you're feeling, who wrote this? This is so amazing. Wow, did I do that? It's that triumphant Gloriana feeling inside you that goes, yes, that's it. As opposed to, I've had this experience too. It's close. I like it. It's good, but it's not that gates of heaven opening feeling that you get. And that's what I would
of angels singing.
Oh, you can hear them singing. It's just, and you get shivers, and it's really interesting as a writer and an author and all that stuff. You don't get that every day necessarily. And the more we work on it, the more we lean into it, the more we experience. It's like a muscle, I think. I liken it to golf. Do you play golf, Steve?
I do not play golf. I have played golf.
Well, you're like me then. I love golf. I think it's really fun. And yet I get those days, most days, where I swing my club, I hit the ball, it goes about 6 inches. And then I whack at it again, and it might go a whole 4 feet. And I'll duff my way down the fairway, and by the end of it, I'm going, oh, who invented this dumb game anyway? But then I hit off the next tee, and that ball goes sailing as far as the eye can see. I lose sight of it, and I get that shivery feeling of, wow, that's an amazing feeling. And I think writing is kind of like that you get the days where you're duffing, it's you're hitting it, but it isn't going very far. Right. And then you get the moments where it sails through the air, and you just feel suddenly you realize it's spring. You get that spring feeling in you. So yeah, I kind of think that but the more we practice, okay, that's where I was going with this. In golf, the more you get out there and keep playing, the better you get. And maybe you get some lessons, and maybe you get someone to show you how to improve your grip or your stance or whatever. And ultimately, you can become a very good golfer. And it's the same with writing. You keep practicing, you keep trying, you try new things, you don't give up, you exercise that muscle, and ultimately you can get a lot better. Get that excited.
That's such a good analogy. And like I said, I have played golf. I do not play golf. It's been years since the last time I was on a golf course. But I remember that feeling of both kind of the agony and the ecstasy of the sport, right? There's the agony of, oh crud, that landed in the bunker, or that, landed in the sand trap, or that landed in the water, or whatever. Yeah. It's like, but then there's the times when it just goes, and there's that kind of I think about story as kind of like you're living your life on a knife edge, right? And it's easy to fall onto either side, right? The agony side or the ecstasy side. And it's learning how to live life on that knife's edge, right? And kind of playing golf, that was a really good hit, that was not a really good hit, and being able to keep playing the game whichever way the ball lands, or I don't I'm not a golfer, so I don't have lots of great golfing
Well, I'm not really either. I love the game. I'd love to get good at it, and I haven't spent a lot of time at it. Whereas writing, I've devoted decades to becoming a better writer. And I think too, I mean, I wonder if this is true with golfers, that with writing, I'm not sure you ever become perfect. I think there's always more to learn and more ways to improve and ways to become better with metaphor or hypnotic language patterns or whatever it might be that you can play with language. I don't know if you get to be a perfect golfer. Maybe you do, but I don't think you ever find perfection consistently necessarily in writing. There's more you can always become as an author, as a writer.
Yes, absolutely.
What do you think about that?
I think that's one of the things that really attracts me to the craft is, I was thinking about that in terms of speaking recently. I really recently started the World of Difference Toastmasters Club, and we're just waiting for Toastmasters International to process all the forms that we sent in, and we're already recognized as an official club. It's a busy time of year for them right now.
Yeah.
But I've been a member of Toastmasters for 6 years, and I've gone pretty much at least weekly to meetings, and sometimes several meetings during a week to various clubs. And at every meeting, there's an opportunity for you to get feedback, keep your eye on the camera, or, use more vocal variety, or, don't use so many pauses, or whatever, but there's always feedback, and I keep working on it, and I keep getting incrementally better at it. But it's been 6 years, and just like with writing, I've been writing since I was 6 years old. So, and I just had my 54th birthday last week. So
woohoo, happy birthday. Yay.
So I've been writing for a very long time, and I'm still, there are times when the writing ends in the sand trap, and there are times when the writing lands, it's a hole in one. It's like, oh my gosh, like you were saying earlier, how did that happen? There's just this magic experience of like, that just really, really landed. And you never, at least I've never gotten to the point where I know for a fact that this one's going to land. I can tell when it's, going in that direction. I can tell that, when something feels right. And again, going back to your bio, learning to listen to it with our heart as well as with, our ears or our eyes or whatever. But that when we really tap into what it is we have inside and get really clear on how that speaks to us, then we gain some more facility with getting our words to land on the green rather than in the creek or the lake or whatever, for it to go far off course. But it takes practice. And, just like with golf, I imagine that, that it's not just practice once, it's not just, okay, well, I practiced a whole bunch, a year ago and I'm done and I don't have to worry about that anymore. If you don't keep that practice alive, if it's not something that is living for you daily, then the chances of you hitting that hole in one are reduced.
Yep, I totally agree. I think that's well said. It's practice. And it's interesting because I think as a society, we have this image of an author or a writer as a dreamy individual who spends afternoons in an attic apartment somewhere, drafty attic, scribbling away on their notebook and making their soul sing and struggling. And and it's not a cheerful image that we have. It's almost as if there are these divine beings who are meant to be writers. And while I do believe, as we've discussed before, I do believe there is a DNA component to writers. I think many more people than writers can write books and can write excellent books. You don't have to be that dreamy youth spending their life in a drafty attic trying to become a good writer. But I think there is something in the commitment to being a writer, to being a better writer, that makes all the difference in the world.
So that's interesting, because so it sounds like what you're saying is that there's a spectrum, as there are with many things, that there are those writers who, write because they have something to say in this instance. They might not be writers. I think you used, in a previous conversation, I think you used the idea of writers with capital letters and writers with lowercase letters, right?
Capital W writer, yeah.
Yeah. That there are those who are the capital W writers who live to write. And I would, especially having spent the first quarter of this year not writing nearly as much as I have in past times, and really by the end of the quarter, just really hungering for that expression, both the agony and the ecstasy of expression, the frustration of this is not coming out the way that I want it to come out, and the ecstasy of, it just like, that just really hit, that just really landed, and I don't know how it is for you, but for me, it's always, there's always a little bit of trepidation when I go out. So as if I were a golfer going out on the green, and, what is this day going to bring? When I write, I'm not going out on the, well, actually, one of the places I do write does have a green background to it. So there is some green to it. But going out onto that blank canvas, that blank page, and like, what's going to happen here? Am I writing, and however long I'm writing, is it, a couple hundred words, or is it 1,000 words, or whatever? But by the time I'm done with this course of writing, what's it going to be like? Is it going to feel awesome, or is it going to be like, oh, that just didn't work out? And I never know. Most of the time, fortunately, I feel really good about what I've written, such that it motivates me to keep going. But how do you handle it when, well, two things I guess I want to ask is, one, what type of writer do you work with, and what's the relationship like when you're working with those different types of writers? Are you working with the lowercase writer as well as the capital writer, maybe in the glowing letters and
with the angels singing?
Right.
Yeah, I work with everything and everybody. There's such a range. So my mission is to support the people who are writing books that will make a difference in the world. And I believe in peace on earth, or a more peaceful earth. I do believe it is possible. And I think writing a really powerful book will unlock the anger in people's hearts and create more peace and harmony. And so that's why I do what I do, is because I would love to know when I leave this planet that in some ways, I've contributed to a more peaceful place for my children and grandchildren and so on. And so what that means is the people who find their way to me often are capital W writers, but don't know it yet. So they have lived a life of suppression of that inner writer, where they've had to make ends meet. They've maybe had relationships that didn't liberate the writer in them for lots of reasons, not to blame anybody, but it's just life. I mean, life is busy, and it's confusing sometimes. And so often by the time someone has come to me with a dream to write a book, we work to uncover those layers that have been hiding the inner capital W writer. Some people, the writing of a book is wrapped in a larger goal. And so the book is a means to an end, a different end. Still, I work with people who have a mission to make the world a better place. In some cases, that book is part of a strategy, if you want to look at it that way, where it's not necessarily about the book, it's about the bigger dream that they want to make possible. And so for them, it tends to be a little more of a functional part in their life, that book. And that's okay too. That's wonderful, because any book is a transformational journey. Whoever you are, wherever you are, however you define yourself or your life, if you're writing a book, you are taking steps along a transformational path, and it will change who you are and who you perceive yourself to be. Now, I don't think every book coach or editor looks at this experience through that lens, but that's what I perceive in the people that I work with. Man, are like, it's about leadership. You write that book and you are going to become a deeper leader of yourself, first of all, but also of the community that you're here to serve. So it's really important to write a book. Like, I just think it's not, I get really frustrated because so much in the entrepreneurial space right now is about writing a book to check a box and become an Amazon best-selling author and go on to the next. And it negates to me the power of a book. It's like it's a commodity, not an entity that will change people's lives. And there's nothing, like, it's okay that if that's what you want to do, there's no judgment there. However, there's more available to people who want to write books in terms of that personal journey. It's more than checking a box. It's growing who you are. It's stepping into a much bigger evolution of who you have it in you to be. And the vehicle for that transformation is actually the writing of the book itself. It's so cool. I just love what I do.
That is so cool. And I totally relate. I've been working on my memoir, which has taken many different forms over the last couple of years. And just in the process of identifying what it is that I have to say in that memoir, right? And initially it was not a memoir. It was more of a, follow this path, and, I'm the guru sitting on top of the mountain, telling you whatever. But as I wrote it and developed it, and it that not only did it change, but I changed in the writing of it, and accepting, and probably also some rejecting, some editing, some clearing away of stuff that didn't really fit. That there's both the stuff that really works well, and there's the stuff that really doesn't work well, and it's getting clear on both those things. It's not just, I think it's really important in finding our voice that we get clear on what's on par and what's, not on par, right? What's on track and what's off track. And the more that we do that, the more that we express ourselves and put ourselves out into the world through speaking, through writing, through, having conversations, or through whatever means that we're sharing our message with the world, that message becomes stronger. And the relationship with our creative expression and with our audience, transforms.
Yes, I would say absolutely. And I'd love to go down a little rabbit warren path, if we could, a little rabbit hole about that, because it makes me think of, a lot of people that I know, and I've been one of these people too, love to journal. And journaling is so cathartic, and it is such a wonderful exploration of your relationship to words. It's fantastic. And I think sometimes people believe, okay, well, I've got 20 years of journals now, I can write a book. And I think it's a really important distinction, because you just kind of alluded to that. Your journal is about you and your experience. It's personal. It's about how you perceive life. It's so intimate. And a book is about your reader. And there needs to be some kind of equation that transforms that journal experience that's so personal into an experience that your reader will find powerful. So if anybody is at the moment hoping to take their journal and publish it, great idea as a start, but I would highly recommend you look at, okay, how can I make this journal relevant to my ideal reader? And by the way, know who that might be. Who do you want picking up your book going, I've been waiting for this my whole life. I can't believe it's here. You know, just have a sense of who that person is and turn those journals into a book for them, a gift for them.
You know, one of the things that I do probably more as a hobby than anything, but something that I invest a fair amount of time in is learning different languages, right? So, you know, whether that be Spanish or German or Greek or Welsh or whatever. And it's really, as I've done that, and I just passed, and I didn't realize this until I got the notification, just passed 365 days on Duolingo.
Oh.
And
Hey.
and what I am learning through this, not only am I learning different languages, but I'm also learning, you know, just how challenging it can be to be speaking the same language with our audience. You know, that, you know, someone could lay a bunch of Greek in front of me, literally, you know, and I might be able to get an idea of what is being said, might be in bold letters and underlined about 10 times.
Hopeful.
Yes. But the more that I get comfortable with that language, the more that I get comfortable with my audience's language, you know, the easier it is to communicate with our audiences. And one of the things that I contend is that story is much about listening as it is about speaking or writing, right? You know, the better that we get at removing the blocks or the misunderstandings or the challenges, and especially with the idea that your aim is to create greater peace in the world. You know, there are things that create greater peace and there are things that destroy the peace that we have, right? But it's learning how to, through language, we learn to see the world through different eyes, through different ways of expressing ourselves, right? That the world becomes a little bit more personal, perhaps, rather than distant.
Yeah, I like languages too. And it's interesting you should say that, because I really finally got English grammar. Like I suddenly went, oh, I know everything about English grammar, and I don't. But it's suddenly like the light went off when I learned my third language. So I in Canada, we learn French at school. I think I started in about grade 6. I think my kids went to a bilingual school, like in a French immersion school. So we learned a lot younger. But then in high school, I started in on Spanish. And it was in Spanish, as I was learning, I went, oh yeah, that's here's the English equivalent of that. And suddenly got language around the different parts of the sentences and so on. So, it really is, it was such an expansive experience to start learning more languages, that I think I like how you're looking at the world as though, gee, there's so many other languages to learn, you know, like even English, we have more to learn about our own language always, which is
absolutely
kind of cool.
I heard someone say that the English language has some 170,000 words in it, right? And I look at a dictionary, the Oxford Dictionary or something, and, you know, there's definitely plenty of words in the language. And I've got a pretty decent vocabulary, but I know the percentage of 170,000 that I know would be a very small percentage. And yeah. So yes, there's always more to learn.
Interesting. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I heard that Winston Churchill had the largest vocabulary of any human in modern times, at 50,000 words.
Wow.
And I was at a talk with Hiram Smith, who was one of the founders, I think, of
Franklin Covey.
Franklin Covey, yes. And he's big on literacy. And I don't know what he's doing now. This was probably 7 or 8 years ago that I heard him speak. And his comment was, so great for Winston Churchill. a modern business person probably has a working vocabulary of about 25,000 words.
Mm,
But he said what he's beating the bushes about, and he's on a literacy campaign because he says today's average teenager has a working vocabulary of about 2,500 words. And
really?
so when you put that together with the idea that we can only express a thought that will fit inside our vocabulary, then
Mm,
the world is in trouble. If the future of our world is going to be led by people who have a vocabulary of only 2,500 words, the size of the ideas that they can express is going to be that, small like that too. And
mm,
so we need to expand our vocabulary so that we can contain bigger thoughts within it and bigger ideas and bigger actions, because thoughts lead to
mm.
actions. So that was
So we
that
can
was
create
quite
that
interesting.
bridge that we're seeking, right?
Bridges. Yeah, bridges are so key in language.
That's
Yeah.
really interesting. One of the things that I also do is I like to look at the etymology of a word, right?
Oh, me too. Yeah.
And one of the things that helps me to see is that, first of all, whatever the size of my vocabulary is that when I take the time to actually learn more about the words that I'm using, that there's oftentimes so much more to the word than just the word itself, right? That there's a whole story, there's a whole history to each of the words that we use. When did it enter the English language? Where did it originate from? What are the components that make up the language that we use? And the more that we get comfortable with the language that we're using, the better bridge builders we become, right?
Yeah.
That when we talk about bridges, one of the bridges that comes to mind for me is the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And part of the reason for that is that one of the reasons I moved to San Francisco was because of the Golden Gate Bridge. I was and still am very much into architecture, and I just wanted to be in that environment where we could see so much rich architecture. But making that bridge was an impossible dream up until the time that they actually built it. It was a large expanse of water, um, and they just didn't know how to make it happen. But they were able to use what they knew and build upon that in order to build that bridge from San Francisco to Marin County. And, the more we develop our facility with words, the more we are able to build those bridges of peace with, different groups of people and make the world a brighter place, a richer place.
Yeah, and that's not even pie in the sky, I don't think. I just think that's common sense. It just makes sense to me. It's not
I'm
Pollyanna
curious
talk
as
about.
to what your journey was like going to the point where you became so clear on harnessing the power of a good story to the goal of peace on earth. Was that something that you were born knowing that that's what you were working on? Or was there a journey for you to arrive at that point?
Oh, it's been such a long journey. I was born knowing I was going to make a living writing.
Mm,
I was like, it sounds like I was like you. I was that kid. We had an apple tree in our backyard. And I was the weird kid in the neighborhood who would drag a tablet of paper up into the apple tree, and I would sit for hours writing
mm,
and scribbling. And I created myths and short stories, and I wrote about how awful my older sister was, and you name it. I would spend hours, literally hours a day writing. So I was a bit of a loner. I mean, I played with the neighborhood kids, but I lived to write. And
mm,
then all the way through school, did really well in English and short story writing and all the things you're supposed to do in English. I was good at it. Got out of high school. I wanted to be a journalist.
mm,
I kind of had a sense that I could make a difference somehow. And at the time when I was a young person, I figured it was journalism because journalists travel a lot as well. And I wanted to do that.
mm,
But they also uncover things that are hidden in a way. I think most journalists are interested in improving the world somehow. Like they're out to get the bad guy quite often, which is a bit of a sharp energy. But there is a good intent behind a lot of the journalists that I've known. But anyway, I worked in journalism right out of university. Oh, so I took political science in university thinking that I could have taken journalism, but if you have a political science degree, you understand the system, not just you understand journalism. And so I did that. I worked in journalism for a few years after university. Then I worked in government communications, still just wanting to get, make a living and write. That's, I wanted to write. And then I worked in marketing, and then life fell apart for me in a lot of ways at a lot of different junctures. My first marriage was not a particularly happy marriage, and there were wonderful things about it. I got a beautiful baby out of it, but that marriage ended in divorce, and it was a very painful time for me. So there was a lot of trying to make money, just trying to support myself, which was very hard. As a writer, you hear how writers don't make any money, and that was kind of true for a long time for me. It was hard, but I somehow I made it work. I ended up in marketing. I worked as a marketing copywriter, just trying to get by. Remarried, had my dream of wanting to write still. Anyway, a lot of stuff happened. Ultimately, my second husband passed away. He had cancer and he died. And I had two little kids, two new little kids at the time. So again, it was for me, how do I make a living as a writer? I got to figure this out. I have kids to support. I needed flexibility as a mom, as a widowed mom. There was no irritating ex-spouse to take the kids every other weekend. I was like, okay. And so freelancing was how I did that. Somewhere along the line, I began a real serious look at what my life was about. After my husband died, really was the time when I really had to examine who I was, what was I doing on this planet, what was I here for, was this all there was, scrambling. And I still do a fair bit of scrambling, but it's happier scrambling now. It's like I have an event coming up this weekend and I'm scrambling right now, but it's a happy scramble. But yeah, it was in that investigation of my life that I found that, yeah, I am a good writer. Hey, look, I've written a few books, I help people write, all the pieces came together very slowly. And I don't even remember where I was when I realized I have the opportunity to create more peace on earth through my coaching, through helping other people write their books. It's like leveraging everybody's ingenuity and wisdom and talent. It's like I can be one of the levers that helps people catapult out into the world to share their messages and make people's lives better. Because if they don't get their books written, nobody can hear what they have to say.
Yeah.
And so my life and my children's lives can't improve if people's hearts don't open. And so I don't know. I honestly don't know when I figured it out, but now I'm very firmly aware of the fact that I can make a difference. And we all can. We just don't know it for a long time. And now I know what I think my difference is. And so I can play with that. And I think that's the other thing, is it's become fun. It's not my responsibility to save the world. It's like, oh wow, I wonder what we can get up to.
Wow.
Oh wow, what can these books do? Let's see. And so that's the spirit I bring to it. And it's hard work. Writing a book is a lot of work, but with a cheerleader, it goes a lot easier. And someone who I hold the vision for my clients quite often, because when people first start writing a book, it's it's like, I don't know what I'm doing. I think I can do this. And yes, you can.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'll help you do that. Like we got this. It's done. It's a done deal. It's just, you got to put the time and the effort into doing it.
That's so cool. And I'm thinking about bridges while you're sharing that, and just, that peace is on the other side of, the Golden Gate Bay or whatever, that, and you've got to figure out, how am I going to write in such a way that, that we span the gap between, where we are right now and where it is that we want to be, right? And it isn't
Yeah.
like with anything, it isn't something you just whip out on a weekend, although it could be. Some books have been written, some really good books have been written in a weekend.
Yeah.
It's not the norm, but really it's what I'm getting at is just that it takes effort, and you've got to put, one word after the other. You've got to keep going until you get to that other side. And having a cheerleader, as you say, to help you go through the emotional challenges, as well as the the intellectual challenges of, how do I do this? How do I format this? How do I, what is the grammar that I need to be using, or, what's the word choice or whatever. So there's both on the one hand, you have the emotional side kind of blowing. I think about emotions as kind of like the weather system that's playing while you're doing the work that you're doing, right?
Interesting. Yes. Yeah.
If you're building the bridge, you're um, you got the engineering as to how to do it. You still got to deal with the emotional aspects of how to bring it all together and how to ride through the storms that happen. And having someone on your side can make a huge difference, because writing can be, but doesn't have to be, a solitary effort. And the more that I find that the more I bring people into my writing, both through sharing what I write, as well as, finding allies who are also writers or coaches or, whatever that may be, that it helps that experience be so much more rewarding, both in the doing of it and in the completion of it. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so hard for people too, because a lot of the people that I work with are real freedom seekers. They're independent. They don't follow the crowd. They've got ideas that don't match what society says the ideas should be. So they're made to be different. And that's one of their most wonderful qualities, is they don't fit in. I don't quite fit in. Like, I don't at all fit in a lot of ways. I've learned how to mold myself into the mold, but to the extent that that's important. But when you've got a freedom seeker who doesn't really follow the crowd and doesn't really want to be part of a crowd, you've got to balance that with, well, hey, we've got a crowd here who's a lot like you.
Yes.
We're all kind of like that.
Yeah.
Come and play with this crowd of kind of offbeat people that are writing books to change the world. And that's where my community comes together, is that we get that we're different. We get that we're freedom seekers. We get that we're not following the mold, that we don't do things the way people typically do things. Like, I haven't held down a real job since 1992. Like 30 years. I was the last time I was employed by someone. I've been making
Wow.
a living for 30 years. Totally unemployable now. Like, God bless anybody who would try to hire me, because I'm so used to my freedom and calling my shots and doing what I feel like doing today. And I do that within a structure that's highly supportive of a business. But I'm kind of like a lot of the people that I work with, that we don't follow that mold that seems to be what the rest of the world wants.
Yeah, which is really cool. I mean, I am also a freedom seeker and, a traveler, and, both in time and place and so forth. And, it is cool to be in a community where that is celebrated and honored, rather than, no, you've got to do it this way because this is what I said you need to do. And it's just like, well, okay, that's great for you, but maybe not so much for me.
Exactly.
With that thought, can you tell us a little? You've got two things you've shared with me. One, the event that you have happening this weekend. Can you tell our viewers what that's all about? And also, maybe if you also sent me a link to Write Like a Pro, if that plays a role in that as well.
Yes, thank you for asking. I'm so excited about my event. like I say, I'm scrambling a little bit because I've never done this before. It's a lot of work. I'm backed up by a fabulous team though. My assistant Tanya Brown does all the tech part of anything to do with anything that happens in my community. She's brilliant. So thank you, Tanya. And I have another assistant, Rizal Aguilucho in the Philippines, who's also helping us with that. But yeah, we've got, it's a sizable event at this point. We've got over 300 people registered to attend, and it's all about your book. It is meant to be an immersion in your book writing experience. So 3 days, April, what are we, sorry, wondering what day it is. April 9th, 10th, and 11th from 11 a.m. Eastern, that's 8 a.m. Pacific, to 8 p.m. Is it 8 p.m.? Yeah, Eastern. So it's a full day. And within that day, on the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we're going to be focusing on your book and your experience as an emerging author. Some of the people that have registered actually are already authors. They've already written that first book or are in the process. So there are people that have, you know, some fairly substantial qualifications for the author part of who they are. And it's fabulous because what it tells me is there's always more, you know, and I'm here for more. What more can you bring to your game? So wherever you are on that writing continuum, come and play with me, because it's we'll be looking at your author vision. I'm very focused on vision. I do a lot of visioning for my own life. And so we have a fair component around the vision, the why, of course. Why do you want to do this? Because our why drives us forward. And also we're going to look at the writing and the, you know, what's an editor for? Do you need one? Yes. Doesn't have to be me, just get one. And also looking at some practicalities around book publishing and book marketing. So what I found when I was first starting this authoring journey of mine was I didn't have a clue how to get published, how to launch a book, how do you market it? Like so many questions. And so this event aims to provide a lot of distinctions around why you might choose one path over another, whether it's publishing or marketing, so you can lay out a roadmap for yourself. And so it's going to be a lot of fun. We've got exercises to do, and we're going to let our inner writer out to play for the weekend. So anybody who wants to let their inner writer play, come on and play. And even if you don't think you have an inner writer and you just want to write a book, come and see if this is for you. Everyone's welcome. Oh, I should say though, so the event is free for the live stream experience. So I'm making that available to everybody. And for $1, you can upgrade to get an interactive ticket, and the interactive ticket gets you the link to the Zoom room. So you get a community experience if you upgrade to a paid ticket. I have a $47 VIP ticket available. And for that $47, you get the interactive experience, the Zoom link, and we're doing a VIP networking party Thursday night. And for anybody who has that ticket, so that we can actually have breakout room experiences with other people who are working on books. And I'm highly excited about that, because I find that when people who are working on books get together and get to talk about their book, it's like it's a huge activation of the project itself. So we're going to be doing that. VIP people also get my editing checklist. So I've created a checklist for people who have finished their manuscript and want to save money on the editing by just going through this checklist to make sure your manuscript is formatted correctly, and a lot of little details like that. And also the VIP members get I have a PDF on how to choose an editor. I've rescued a lot of manuscripts from people brought me saying, I don't know what the editor did, but I can't read it. So, there are lots of fabulous editors out there too. And so it is really important to me that people pick an editor that will align with the project and will do a good job for them. So I have some tips on choosing an editor as well.
Nice.
Yeah, so it's just going to be, the link to, I guess I can share the link to register is authorkickstartlive.com. And that'll get you to register for the free experience, the complimentary experience. And then you'll be taken to an upgrade page where you can upgrade to the interactive ticket for $1 or the VIP ticket for $47. And as I say, the $47 gets you a lot more experiences. As an author, it's probably a lot more fun, but I get, maybe people just want to spend that dollar and save some money. So, oh, and the recordings, that's also what the VIP tickets get, is a copy of the recordings of all events that take place during the 3 days. So
Nice.
fun. Yeah, it's going to be fun.
That sounds really cool. And I will put a link to that in the comments below this video. And I just want to thank you for sharing your heart, your wisdom, your experience with me and with our audience. I love the idea of, writing the bridge to a more peaceful world. Last Friday, which was my birthday, I posted in the Facebook group, what is your wish? And someone asked me, what is my wish? And my response was world peace. Although I said world peace because, well, I'm me. And, but the idea of my vision is, that if we can just love ourselves a little bit more, just love ourselves a little bit more each day, not only do we feel better about ourselves, but we also feel better about the people around us, that we have more compassion for, the challenges that we see around us, the fact that, we all have a little bit of the ugly duckling in us as well as the, beautiful swan in us, and by embracing both of those aspects of ourselves, we have compassion for those who might be having an ugly duckling moment, as well as, the thrill of having that swan moment when, things just work out, you get that hole in one that we were talking about earlier.
Exactly. Here, here, we're on the same path, my friend. I appreciate you very much for saying that and for having me here. Thank you for opening your room to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And that will conclude our live recording for today. Again, remember that we have these stories of gold in my Art of Entrepreneurship Facebook group every Tuesday at noon Eastern Time, 9 a.m. Pacific, and would love to hear your story. So come join us and join the community. Until then, be a bright light in someone's dark night. Ta-ta.